Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we are going to begin the funeral services for Sarah L. Davis. If you have a cell phone or a pager, we would ask for you to please take a moment to turn it off or place it in the silent mode. And officiating today's services will be Rabbi Paul Cohn from Temple Jeremiah.
She can't make it up here.
Okay.
There is a ritual that we perform before we begin the service for Sarah Davis, and the ritual is called Kriya. It's literally a tearing, and it's a ritual that comes to us from our ancestors. When they heard of the death of a loved one, they would tear the article of clothing they were wearing. It's a sign of grief and sadness, to be sure, but also a sign of the confusion and sometimes even the anger we feel when someone that we love is taken from our midst. The Kriya ribbon, which we wear today, also serves as an outward sign to those we will meet in the coming days that indeed there has been a tear in the fabric of our lives. So without having to say a word, people will see the ribbon and will know how to respond accordingly. So I invite those who are wearing the ribbon to step forward. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech haolam Dayan ha'emet. Blessed are you, God, ruler of the universe, the judge of truth. I did not really have the pleasure and the privilege of knowing Sal in life. I did have the distinct honor of sitting with members of her family, with Bob and Judy, with Brian and Deborah, and by phone David as well. And one of the elements that came forward was how much Sal loved talking to people and being engaged in conversation and hearing stories. And we're here this afternoon with the responsibility and indeed the privilege to share her story and to honor her life, to honor the relationships that she held so very dear, that were so important to her, relationships of family, relationships with friends. Esaina el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Esaina el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim va'aretz Ezri me'im Adonai Ose shamayim va'aretz. In this moment, we listen to the words of the psalmist who wrote, I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will come my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. Adonai is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. Adonai will guard your going and your coming now and forever. Amen. Death has taken our beloved Sarah Davis. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Sarah's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever. For her companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It teaches us of our kinship with the divine, in joy as in sorrow, in light as in darkness, in life as in death. Psalm 23, the Shepherd's Psalm. Adonai roi lo echsar, bino teshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yenahaleni. Nafshi shovev yishovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek, yancheni v'maglei tzedek, leman shemo, gam ki elech begei tzal mavet lo irara, ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Taharoch lefanai, shulchan neged torerai, dishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai, kol yemei chayai. V'shavti bevet Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar, Adonai roi lo echsar. Inside the pamphlet you received here at the cemetery, you'll find the English translation of Psalm 23, and I invite you to join together with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. On Friday night, as we are preparing to welcome Shabbat, at many homes, at many tables, blessings are offered to welcome Shabbat. There's the blessing when we light the candles to officially mark the beginning of the Sabbath. There's the blessing over the wine, the kiddush, that recognizes the joy of Shabbat. And then the motzi, the blessing over the challah, a special loaf of bread baked in honor of Shabbat. And then there's an opportunity to offer blessings for those around the table. Parents can offer a blessing to their children. spouses can offer a blessing one to the other. And the words that are given to a husband to pronounce to his wife, over his wife, as words of blessing, come to us from Scripture, actually from the book of Proverbs. And this section of Proverbs is known as a woman of valor. And I think it speaks very much to the values that Sarah not only taught by word, but most importantly taught by example. A woman of valor who can find, she is more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm, all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding, her candle burns on into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given and God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. In ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave and that there is strength in faith. So with Job, we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one, Sarah Davis, who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for this strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and your love. As we now say, Yehi shem Adonai mevorach, blessed be the name of God, now and forever. Amen. I invite you to take these next moments to call forward the cherished memories that you have of Sarah's life and how her love touched each of our hearts in this moment of silent reflection. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. Be acceptable in your sight. God, our rock and our Redeemer. God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Our tradition teaches us that words that come from the heart go straight to the heart. And so as we continue to tell the story of Sarah Davis, it is fitting that we continue to do so with the words of her family. I invite Brian to come forward, speaking on his behalf and behalf of his siblings.
So this is something that the four of us put together over the last day or so, and I want to start out by thanking my sister-in-law Judy, because she's going to back me up when I totally lose my shit here. So, and I couldn't be doing this without knowing that she's back there. So Sal was born September 27th, 1926, to Bertha or Bella and Sam Light on the west side of Chicago. She was the youngest of 5 children. Based on her genetics, I'm not sure if it was 23 or me or exactly what we did, it turns out she's descendant from a long line of Sammies. These are reindeer herders that are found near the Arctic Circle. This is real. And this actually explains her dislike of heat. Also, you can see it in her face. She looks like these reindeer herders. And actually, Jason went and visited these guys, and it looked like my mom. She met her future husband when she was a teen, and as far as we know, he was her only love. They were married for 62 years. I asked people to heckle just to get me through this. During that time, she raised 4 children. She went to college in her late 40s and got a BA, and then she got a Master's of Arts at 55. And then she taught for 3 or 4 years at Northwestern, but we were thinking of promoting her to Northeastern. Sorry, we were going to promote her to Harvard, but we thought that was a stretch. She loved to travel, especially to Europe. She went to Israel twice, Mexico, especially Acapulco, where things that happened in Acapulco stay there. We're pretty sure Dave was conceived there. They went on an RV trip around the Pacific Northwest, so she spent like 2 weeks in an RV with 5 other people. I'm not sure. Okay, just David. Okay, but he's a multiple personality, so it's like, oh, Herbie was there, wasn't he? Okay, so there were 2. Okay. And art, she loved art, romanticism. She loved Caravaggio, even while maintaining it had nothing to do with the naked young men. She loved Impressionism and modern art. She did her own version of Jackson Pollock that you'll be able to view at the house this evening. Theater was huge with her. Broadway, she loved it. She would go to shows, and Dave was saying that she can remember every show, who she went with, who was in it, and when they saw it. Most of you don't know that she smoked Virginia Slims, which she did mostly while driving. And during her driving, she studiously avoided highways and bridges because she didn't like those. And that made it took like twice as long to get anywhere, but that was Sal. She was wicked at Scrabble and could be down by 100 points, and she would still put down a 7-letter word so she could crush you by 200. She never took prisoners. She loved to read, sometimes multiple books a week, history, crime, literature. She read it all. And this led to her volunteering for years at both the Glenview and the Brandeis Library. Throughout her life, she made friends, and once made, they stuck. She would still have friends from high school if she hadn't outlived most of them. She made friends with friends of her kids and grandchildren. This is a little bizarre. And even after those people stopped being friends with the grandchildren and her children, these people were still friends with Sal and would call her and would come by and visit. That was Sal. I think that really says a lot about her. This week she told me that whether she knew somebody for 5 minutes or a million years, she had an effect on them. And we all have an effect on these people, and that could be passed down to their children. More importantly, she was a friend to the people in her family. She may have been her mom.
Take a deep breath.
Thanks, Drew. But she was also our buddy. We're good. She was someone that you can call just to talk about a book, a movie, politics, sports, especially the Cubs, and something in your life. And she was always there for us. And as the rabbi mentioned, she did like to talk, so that worked out. She was funny. She loved a good joke. She loved to laugh and could swear like a sailor. And on her last trip to the hospital, she told the ICU team to F off, which they appreciated. And then they reveled in telling us the story afterwards. So that was Sal. That was Sal. She lived for her family as much as for her she lived for her family, and as much as she loved her children, you mentioned this, she loved her grandchildren and great-grandchildren even more. So now I would briefly like to read a couple of excerpts from the Book of Sal. So in 2019, her grandchild, Ellie, sent her a list of questions that you can find on Amazon, and I recommend everybody does this. And Sal answered them. So what you're going to hear here are Sal's answers to the questions that were posed in this missive that will be published shortly, and you'll be able to buy it on probably Amazon, because I think that's where, okay. So question number 1, what was your favorite thing to do with your mom? Sal said, we studied for her citizens test a whole winter. She passed with flying colors. The judge complimented her on it. It was so much fun, we never laughed so hard. Do you have any special family antiques or heirlooms that have significant importance? I am the family antique. Yeah. What was your all-time favorite holiday of us together as a family? Any holiday that came with a meal. What did you want to be when you were little? Alive. Were you spoiled in any way? I am the baby of 5 kids. Everyone treated me as I deserved, royally. Where was your secret hiding spot as a kid? What did I have to hide? That is pretty good. Let's see. Wait. What was your greatest school accomplishment? Got my master's degree when I was 55 years old and really enjoyed the whole experience. Thanks to your mom, she's talking about Debbie now, she took me by the hand and got me registered. So thank you, Debbie.
Good job, Debbie.
Yeah. Did you have a job after school? The best thing that happened towards the end of the war was jobs for teens. 50 cents an hour, but 50 cents went far. I brought my first store sweater, and it was because everything they were making, they made all their own clothes up to that point. They were poor. This was her first store-bought sweater. It was pretty, red with cable, front and back, $3. The Bunt Candy Factory, oi! Stand in line, and the conveyor belt slid by. I put 3 pieces of chocolate in paper cups in designated places, same places all day. Eunice, who was her best friend, and I worked 1 full day and quit. Yeah. Roma.
So it really was the I Love Lucy.
It was, so this is
She really-
exactly,
she really
and I
was.
think we should sue. What is the secret key to happiness? Keep your eyes open so you know when it's there. Sad when you miss it and didn't notice it. Watch out for sunsets. Was having a family as rewarding as you thought it would be? Even better, lucky me. What was the scariest thing about raising a grandchild? Dropping one. Do you think life's fair? We should be so lucky. What golden rule do you live by? There is only one. Do not do to others as you would not want them to do to you. Works as well as anything, Hillel said. What is the most precious commodity that shouldn't be wasted? Roasted duck. Telling ya. Yeah, she was good. All right, I'll just a couple more. How do you handle betrayal in your life? Wave goodbye. Did you ever experience a miracle when itch cream worked? What should I never waste energy on? Anger. A good punch is quicker. Robert used to say, hit me, better than timeout stuff. What is your favorite memory about grandmotherhood in general? Each arrival was an oh my God moment. Thanks to all who participated. What should I never do? What should I never forget to do? I forgot. Who or what was the best teacher about life? Time. That's pretty brilliant. Did you ever experience unrequited love? Nah, who wouldn't love me? All right, I'm just gonna skip to the last one. What have you always wanted to do but never did? Modeled fishnet stockings and 5-inch heels. I could, but the Russia people would tie up traffic. That was Sal. So in conclusion, number 1, as sad as today is, Sal would not want us to be sad. Number 2, she wanted everyone to know that she had a great life, no regrets, except the Cubs did give up a grand slam home run in the 3rd inning on Saturday, which she watched, and that totally sucked. They couldn't win one game. 3, she had a great time and more or less did everything she ever wanted in life. And 4, that we are all better people for having known her.
Well done, Brian.
Yeah, you did.
One of my favorite quotations that I still am searching for the originator of this quotation is that coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. And I was thinking about this especially with Sal being one of 5 children, because there's a story in this week's Torah portion that is called Pinchas is the name of the portion. But towards the end of the portion, there's this encounter that Moses has with 5 siblings, 5 daughters of Zelophehad. And most often in the Bible, in the Torah especially, women's names are not given. They are not given the same kind of prominent role as the men of the story. So it's very noteworthy that these 5 women, these 5 daughters, these 5 sisters are all given names. And their names are Machla, Noah, Hagla, Milcah, and Tirzah. And in the Midrash, in the stories, and I realized that Sal loves stories, so I figured I would start with a story, that the stories that the rabbis build around these 5 daughters are quite remarkable, and I think speak very much to Sal's character. In one particular Midrash, they're described as possessing 3 really important character traits. They modeled 3 very important values: Chokhmah, Darshanut, and Tzedakah. And those translate to wisdom, learning, and righteousness. And And then it goes on to talk about what exactly is meant by this. Well, they were wise. These women were wise because they spoke at the appropriate time. That they knew when was going to be the right time to approach Moses. And their approach to Moses was over an issue of inheritance. That their father died without having a son, without having a male heir. And up to that point, Moses had been talking about how land passes from one family member to another, and it's always through the male line, father to son. And so these women come forward and they say, it's not fair. Our father died without any sons. He had 5 daughters. Why should his name be lost? Why should the land be lost from our family? And so they approached Moses at the right time, meaning that he also was talking about some other rules, and that will become clear in just a moment. They were, because Moses was teaching at that moment about Levirate marriage, right? And they took the opportunity to say, if we are like sons, then give us an inheritance, right? Give us a part of the land. But if we are not, you, Moses, must marry or give us a husband for our mother who has died, or husband has died without any male heirs, without any sons. This was the rule of Levirate marriage. And Moses immediately saw that this was something he didn't know how to answer. And so he turned to God. So the issue that they brought forward came from a place of wisdom, a place of learning, a place of understanding, right? So they were learned because they knew what to say, right? They had studied, right? They weren't just coming to complain about something being unfair. They actually had a reasonable argument that they had talked about with one another. They were also righteous. They also expressed and lived tzedakah. And how do we know this? Because we know that they would only marry men who were worthy of them. This was very interesting, right? And that it very much describes what I've learned about Sarah's life and her character and what she taught through word and through deed. You heard about some of the early days where she grew up. It's also known as the GVS, right? The Great West Side. For those of you who know that. Babbitt shared, that as a child of the Depression, she learned the special sweetness of getting the skin of the sweet potato. That was a special treat. Enjoyed escaping the summer heat by sleeping in the park at night. And there was another story, and I think, Babbitt, was that you shared, that of her mother dropping coins to musicians struggling, trying to make it, and wrapping them in an orange wrapper. And so learning, that no matter how little you have, there's always something to give, right? There's always something that you can do to help another person. Real wisdom, real chokhmah. She met friends easily, as you've heard, lifelong friends, and those that she made along life's path. And it was her personality, of course, that drew people to her. Engaging them. Relationships were the key. People can tell when you're asking a question and it's not just pro forma. And Sal was able to do that. She was able to hear the story. So not only did she like to talk, but she enjoyed listening, right? And she did listen. You're waving your head, not so much listening? Or how she lets it die or something? So I'm getting heckled too. This is good. The education was so important. This what was made manifest in these daughters of Zelophehad. She models its importance by going back to school at a later age and showing the importance of what this can mean. Learning meant listening to the stories of other people as well, not just what happened in the classroom. She met her beloved, her one and only, Herbert, when they were both young teenagers. There's some argument about how young they were at the time and where people were actually living at the time, and so we'll leave it at that. Their love of 62 years brought 4 wonderful children into our world: Deborah, Robert, Brian, and David. And she rejoiced as Aaron, Judy, Kathy, and Laura came into the family as the family grew. Judy had shared what a wonderful mother-in-law she was. And when Judy said she was treated like one of her own, the other children chimed in, better than we were treated. She encouraged her children to pursue their interests, to learn, to have interesting conversations. She was so very smart. You've heard reading, becoming an expert in areas of interest to her. She loved to analyze what she was reading and share that as well. And she didn't take herself too seriously and didn't want anybody really to take themselves too seriously. And I don't remember who shared this, a point of pride of what her children had all done, and 3 of whom are doctors, none of whom can operate. Being Jewish was very important to Sal. She embraced Yiddish and Yiddish culture, the traditions and history and foods and celebrations of our people. Deborah, I think you shared that she described herself as an agnostic. And if you'll pardon a little coarse language, an agnostic, was this her definition of what an agnostic was? A chicken shit atheist. I love that. I love that. It was important for her children to have a strong Jewish background, to be able to make their own choices as they grew and made families of their own. She instilled a love of the arts and shows, museums. You heard this. And apparently she kept, and I think, David, you shared this, that she kept current with music. And that one of her favorite artists was Neil Diamond. Very well, he's still around. He's still doing shows. So I guess that's still the live artists. And especially Sweet Caroline, which she got to hear performed at Fenway. It's become one of the national anthems at Fenway, even though she was a real Cubs fan. So I just wanted to get that emphasis in there, a Cubs fan. I will not try and sing Sweet Caroline. But everybody knows. Ba, 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 right? Okay, good. She volunteered at the Glenview Library, very, very fitting. From the time of its rebuilding, she loved to talk to folks there, and some came in just to talk to her. She made that kind of an impact on people's lives. And for this reason, she enjoyed the time most recently at the Mather, because she got to meet a whole new set of people and learn new stories as well. She was confident, she was independent, driving up until this year, right? And the family wanted to make sure that I emphasize with a valid license. She passed the exam. She would do a lot for a laugh, although as you heard, she didn't have to do much to get a laugh. She was a great sense of humor. So very proud of her children. She valued education, friendship, meaningful conversation, and was always up for a good time. Sal taught that we must never forget the impact we have on each other's lives, that even with just a few minutes, we have that impact, and that impact is powerful and important. So in this moment, in sharing Sal's story, the story of her life, let us rededicate ourselves to one another and the relationships we cherish. Let us never forget the impact we can have for good on the life of another. Let us continue to share, to listen, to learn, and to grow like the daughters of Zelophehad, like Sarah L. Davis, Sal. And to this let us say, Amen. I invite you to rise now for the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim, Gezohar Ki Amazirim, Et Nishmat Sarah Bat Shmuel Vela, Shalcha le'olama, Bal harachamim, Yastireha b'seter kenafav le'olamim, Vayitzror b'tzor ha'chaim et nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava, v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Sarah Bat Shmuel Uvela, Sarah L. Davis, devoted mother to Deborah and her Aaron, Robert and his Judy, Brian and his Kathy, David and his Laura, proud grandmother of Jason and his Daniela, Joshua and Lucy, Sarah, Ellie, Malachi, and Ezekiel, cherished great-grandmother of Chloe and Jackson, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. The dust returns to the earth as it was. The spirit returns to God who gave it. It is only the house of the Spirit which we now lay within the earth, for the Spirit itself cannot die. Receive in mercy, O God, the soul of our departed Sarah Davis. Grant her that everlasting peace which you have prepared for us in the world to come. Though no human eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor mind has grasped it, still it is our sure inheritance and our everlasting portion. O God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which loss inflicts is the measure of a love that is stronger than death. Though we cry in the anguish of our hearts, may we be like children who know that their parent is near and who cling unafraid to the trusted hand. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping, as we repeat words hallowed by the generations, the words of the Kaddish prayer. You may find it on the back cover of your pamphlet. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agalah u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam omei omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael V'imru amen. May God grant peace to all who mourn the passing of Sarah Davis and bring comfort to all who are bereaved among us. And together we say, Amen. At the end of the day, we gently tuck our children in for the night. At the end of a person's life, the last act of Gemilut Chasadim, the last act of loving kindness that we can do for her is to cover her grave. We're going to invite the workers here at the cemetery to lower the casket and to cover the vault. Once that is complete, we'll each have the opportunity, for those who wish, to participate in this mitzvah. The custom is to place 3 shovelfuls of earth within the grave and to then allow each person to fulfill the mitzvah with fullness of intention. You can be seated as we wait.
Yeah, thank you.
Just be careful, there's a little thorn there, so hold it from the bottom. Careful, okay. Yeah, most of them are pretty good.
You like the old school color? It's lavender, sort of a blue. I bet you could do that.
This custom rules I'm not familiar with. Doesn't matter which goes first. Why do some people use the back end of the shovel?
To signify this is something
Not the usual purposes.
Can we have one more flower?
You woke up. Thank you.
Little cups for sand.
Oh, you guys are really
Sure. So this is the time that we would invite friends and family. We'll ask maybe to begin with the family. If you'd like to come forward, you can cast your flower into the grave. And then the cemetery has provided some small little cups that we can use to shovel some of the looser and more accessible sand that we can place into the grave as a way of participating in the burial. We'll probably need to share some of the cups, but then they can also be discarded in the little basket next. Thank you.
His wife and no one was killed. A couple people were hospitalized. Adequate warning system. There was like recommendations. Someone else was just gone.
I hope Patty's not mad at me. I always say the wrong thing lately.
She's mad at me. She'll get it. She'll get over it. She gets over it. She's okay. Just stubborn sometimes. Got one way of thinking. That's it.
Yeah. Well, often she's right.
That's the whole problem.
Yeah.
She's always right.
That's her.
Go home. Whatever.
Yeah.
This rabbi is not going to the house tonight. See? Oh, no, I wanted to find out. It's up to your family. I suppose I can. We'll see what the books are.
I almost fell in, yes.
I know when I died, I was great.
Yeah.
Plus your skin tone, sun is not good.
Make sure you have a good grip on that cob. You don't want to lose it.
Yeah, that's such an amazing hair. I was telling Jason it's ridiculous how beautiful it is. Yeah. It's bad. I can share this before it. Yeah.
Sorry, you did good.
I'm gonna change into what we, I wore jeans and a black shirt today. Yeah. Cold shower?
Don't screw up, man. Oh, that was like the best. So you should tell your congregation about this. Yes. Oh my God. I just spoke to last night. What are this? You know, they're not going to be as good as Sal's, but it gives you some work. There's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of experience here and stuff, but that's and Sal actually had mentioned she was going to write her own eulogy. We got around to it, we mentioned it.
Is there more water? Oh, wow.
Anyhow, thank you so much for the great service. I think it helped everybody. I feel better. How appropriate, right?
I still think it's better than that. See, I brought the insurance.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, this does conclude the services here at the cemetery. If you wish to stay and witness the cemetery staff completing the task of covering and closing the grave, you certainly may do so, but if not, you may return to your cars.